One example that demonstrates how I set goals is this task I was assigned in high school. So I grew up and graduated from a very small town in Iowa called Carlisle. And in that town, we had a couple of small parks and trails, but because we were such a small town, like not very many people that lived there happened to know about them. And someone from like the city parks office came to me and asked me to figure out a way to get more teenagers to know about these parks and trails. Specifically, one trail that we ended up doing this event at. And the task was to do something for actually a Halloween event. So it was about a week before Halloween was when our event actually ended up being, and to use the trail that we wanted more people to know about. So we kind of talked it through and decided that that was what I was going to do, is like plan an event. And I am a very theatrical person. I've always been heavily involved in high school theater. I was also involved in community theater, and I did some theatrical related events for other small organizations in the town. And so a lot of people knew I was very theatrical, and that's why they approached me, because they kind of wanted to lean on the more like entertainment route rather than just like a more traditional type of thing. And so how I set goals for this was just setting a bunch of small goals to lead up to the larger thing. So ultimately, like, my first goal was figure out what I want this thing to be. And what came to mind, because of my own personal interest, was creating a haunted trail. And that trail was led by guides. So we had a bunch of different guides, and they would walk guests through the trail and tell this like creepy story. And then as you're going around, there's like haunt actors doing their things and like scaring people. And so I had to write, direct, like produce this entire thing. And so naturally I just kind of set a bunch of little goals for myself, because it can very easily get overwhelming when you look at a big production that you're completely in charge of for the first time, because it's like, oh my gosh, everything needs to be done. And so the goals were just super small, and it was much more fun for me because this is something I love. And I was able to just break it down into small chunks. So I wrote the script, and then my next goal was to find actors and so on. And ultimately, we ended up with this amazing event. It really did show a lot more people the trail, because we had about two or 300 people come, which is a lot for a town with only a couple thousand people in terms of population. So we were very successful in our goal, and it was also really, really nice for me, because it was one of the first times I was able to not only act in a piece, but put on the entire production. And it really helped me get a bigger pool of knowledge for all elements of theatrical events. And also it allowed me to do this really unique theatrical style where the audience is communicating with the actors actively, which is just something I really enjoyed doing. So it was great, and it really allowed me to become a leader. So I faced a lot of challenges in my times at ASU and my times working, but one of the ones that stands out to me most was during my second year at ASU. So before I was a theater and global studies major, I used to be a film major. And as you may expect for a film major, there's a lot of preparation and paperwork that needs to be done. So producers have to create these giant entire binders that include like the rights to filming in an area. We have to check out equipment, and so it contains a bunch of paperwork with that. And there's just a lot of stuff we have to go through. And filming dates are set months in advance because of the amount of paperwork you need to do. And you cannot shoot unless you get this binder approved by your professor. So this is something that's planned for months, but we were shooting during COVID. And one thing about COVID and film is that it did not mix, because if one person gets COVID during your set, you have to shut down. But fortunately, that did not happen. However, my cinematographer's roommate happened to get COVID about 2 days before my film shoot, and I was supposed to film at her house. So not only had I lost a cinematographer, but I also lost a filming place, which is very vital because all of my scenes were set to be filmed at this place. So the only other filming location I had available to me was around like 40 minutes away, which is really far to go when you're a student without a car. So there are several people who, if I had to have them shoot at my house, could no longer make it. So I'd be losing more crew. But I also had to have things done by the certain date because I could only get equipment during a certain time. And so I was in a really narrow window. And so I was quickly thinking of solutions. So the first thing I did was look at my script, and I did some rewrites because instead of working with younger actors, I was assuming I would have to use older actors because they were what was going to be more readily available for me in the area where I was going to end up filming. So I first made adaptations to my script, and I was letting everyone know. And while I was letting people know, I happened to tell a friend who I was just kind of talking to about my situation, and he offered to let me use his apartment. And so what I found out very quickly is that communication, even with people outside of your field or who you wouldn't usually talk to about this certain issue, is a very helpful tool, because I was able to find the new location in Tempe where everyone could come, and I did not have to make that many adaptations to my script. I was also able to take over as cinematographer, and we got everything figured out. But this really allowed me to grow as a filmmaker and as a person, because it was one of my first ever stressful, like, a plan has gone awry, I have to fix it moments. And it went really smoothly, even though things did not go as planned and we had to get new people in there. But it was also nice because I got to network and kind of talk to new people. So it ended up working out well, but it was definitely a stressful challenge. And one example of when I disagreed with someone at work and how I kind of solved that problem is in acting. So one of the most difficult things you can do as an actor, or even as a creative person in general, is clash with other actors or choreographers or directors, because you spend so much time working on this character, you kind of grow attached to them. And it's really hard when your director is like, I want things this way, but you feel like it goes against what you've been planning your character as for like months at this point. And one director in particular I had to work with a lot in high school, I just never got along with very well. Everything worked completely fine, but it just wasn't the best relationship because we had very different communication styles, and a lot of other students had had problems with her in the past because she was a teacher. And so while we were working on this musical, my character had a very small solo, but the role was very important to be done in a specific way because it was a comedic solo. So the sheet music was very basic, but the recording of this character that we were to listen to had completely different music than the sheet music because she adapted it to make it work for the character, because this character was supposed to be like horribly overdramatic, like she's auditioning for a musical and she's supposed to sound bad. And I originally started like doing more notes than what were portrayed on the scene on the sheet music because that's what the recordings and most other actors had done in the past. But my director did not like this. And then later she had told me to add more notes back in and like asked me why I was not adding notes. And so she was just not very good at communication. And so what I kind of figured out was that I just need to try different things and see what sticks, because sometimes you can't directly confront someone because of the dynamics between the two of you. And so it works a lot better to just try new things and see what happens. And so this allowed me to grow a lot because I ultimately did find one that we both liked. And it made me force myself to change more as an actor and really showed me what it's like when two people have two different visions, because that's not something I experienced a lot in the past. So it worked out, but it definitely was interesting working with people with different communication styles.